back for another episode of Raw with a Purpose. I am Tytannie Harris, author, speaker, business consultant, CEO of TMH Behavioral Services, founder of TMH Man Cave.
Long titles.
Shut up, Tasha.
My name is Latasha Davis. I am the couples, marriage, and family therapist here and also relationship expert.
Hey, we are back.
Your fault, my fault. Who fault? All right, so we want to talk about when treatment fails.
Yes. The therapist gets the blame.
It's always the therapist. Like they say, it's all, the customer always right. Not so much in this case.
Yes.
But it's a combination of things. So we want to talk about that because it's a big thing. We know it's also just in general, but we have experienced that at the practice too, where I personally would talk to clients. Sometimes they're like, oh, well, this is not working, or this, and then I go through the compilation of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And some things is that sometimes clients don't know what they're coming in for.
Yep.
That's a big thing. Like, well, I thought I was coming in and talking, and the therapist will figure it out.
Yep.
That's not always the case. Is that the therapist figure out? We're here to guide you.
Mm-hmm.
I think one time, like you said, you're driving the car.
Yep.
We're the passenger. We're just helping you with tool sets and to help you navigate the things that you're coming in for. So we cannot give you the problem, create the treatment plan, and do all the work. This is a collaboration. It's for both parties.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've noticed.
Yeah, I think understanding, like, you don't get overnight success for lifelong problems, right? You come in with lifelong problems, they're not going to be solved in one session. And I think, from a client's perspective, I think it's important. I don't necessarily believe a client has to come in knowing what the issues are, but as you work with your therapist, understanding what your goals are, right? Like, therapy is so much more than just venting, right? We want to have a plan on how do we get you to where you need to be, right? Whatever that is. Also, not looking at us as a fixer, because I often say clients aren't broken. I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to help guide you. I'm here to create a space where you can heal, create your own space where you can just be and kind of open up about whatever it is that you want to talk about. And also, I think accountability. Yep. A lot of times as clients, and I speak for myself too, because I'm a therapist and a client. I'm a therapist. Taking accountability for the role that you play in sessions.
Yeah, it's important because it's like if you're coming in session, you have a goal. And for instance, if a therapist gives you homework and you don't do the homework, how's that gonna work?
Exactly.
If we give you recommendations and you don't use it, or I know just recently I had supervision with one of our therapists, and she gave so many recommendations, so many skill sets to give this client, and the client will keep rejecting everything. If you're rejecting and these are things you never tried before, how do we know it works? So you have to try it so we can tweak it to see what works, what doesn't work. But it's really unfair for you to say, nope, that's not going to work if you never really tried it.
Yeah, I think also like having an open mind as the client, from a client's perspective, and understanding that, like you said before, we're here to help guide you. We're not here to do the work, and you have to do the work. And the work is not doing your session. The work happens outside your session.
And my thing is, I always say it's 80% outside and 20% inside.
I agree.
Most of the work is because the thing is, I can teach you all the skills inside this session. What you're trying to do is work and navigate in the real world. This is kind of like our play world. We're going to talk about the role playing. We're going to do these things, but you have to transfer these skill sets into the real world because that's where you're having the most problems. Right? Yep. So it doesn't make sense for us to do all this work inside and then you don't do none of the stuff outside. What are we doing?
You got to be intentional.
Yes.
You got to be intentional about wanting to change and wanting to heal and understanding that it does take time, right? And it also depends on the type of therapist you have. And we talked about the client, but from the therapist perspective, I think oftentimes where a lot of clinicians drop the ball is using the same treatment modality, meaning cognitive behavior therapy don't work for everybody.
Everybody knows CBT. That is the grandfather of therapy. We know that.
You know how I feel about CBT. I am not a fan of CBT. Cognitive behavior therapy basically says if you change how a person thinks and feels, you can change everything. And I just don't believe that. I believe there are other external factors that come along with that, right? And so understand that not every client will benefit from that same type of treatment. You have to know your client, and you should be well versed. Where do you think your therapist drop the ball at? Like, sometimes we fall short.
Distractions.
Yes.
I've heard, especially since this virtual took place since the pandemic, being at home, I understand people have TVs in their office. So they're probably looking at TV, looking on their phone. I've heard doing intakes, clients having problems with therapists actually on their phone Like looking through the screen and seeing them on their phones. So I know if I was when I was doing virtual sessions with the clients during that time, I would also do a disclaimer. I'm a supervisor here, so I usually would have my phone there, but that's for purposes for emergencies.
Yep.
Like if a therapist is dealing with a client who has suicidal ideation, things like that, then I always let them know, hey, I'm only having my phone here because of certain reasons. But it's times that clients are saying therapists are being distracted and not listening.
Yep.
Just say, well, what do you think? That's not helping.
That's
so
horrible.
and it's horrible because it's like they're paying for a service and you're giving them a half-done steak that they don't want.
Or sometimes clients feel like they're an experiment, and again, I'm not knocking any therapist in the way that they provide the service, but I know oftentimes even having a notebook in your hand and the pen can be distracting for some clients because you take notes to remember, but it's the way that you take notes. We call that motivational interviewing in our work. And so you have to be aware of how you provide that service. I think that's important.
And probably and letting them know, like, how do you feel with me doing this?
Yep.
Is this going to be a concern for you? Bringing them into it. Don't just do it and not say anything and think this okay.
That makes me think about, some clients I've had in the past. My first session, I don't have notebooks or anything out. And I've had clients who have had previous experience with therapists. So they come in, they're like, where's your notebook and your pen? And I'm like, I don't need it. Like, I'm trying to get to know you. And so I think understanding that process, right? Like I want to build this relationship with you. I have to get you to trust me. So I won't necessarily have a paper and pen in the first session. You've already done your intake. So I pretty much have an idea of what you're coming in for, but I want you to have my undivided attention. I think I never really used notebook or pen. I think just bear with me. Every client is like a reality show sometimes. so I like that, but in a way of everybody's story is different. Yeah.
So I can really pinpoint, and they be like, "Oh my God, we talked about it like 2 weeks ago. How do you remember?" Because everybody's story is so different. It's certain things that you bring that I'm just going to instantly remember. It's embedded in my head. Yeah. But then the reason if I do write is maybe it's something that I'm challenging myself to think about something differently of what type of modality or what type of treatment I want to do differently. Like, okay, maybe I'm stuck here. Let me get back to this point and let me kind of flush it out. And then I'll come back and say, you made a point last week and I wanted to flush it out. So I do that. So that's if I had to use a pen or a pen and pad. But typically I can remember everybody's talking points. Okay. I just have that type of memory when it comes to people's stories. I'm like, it's like a storyline. It's like I like to hear what you're saying so I can remember 25 clients. I know 25 different storylines.
That makes me think about when somebody asked me what did I do for a living. I hate to say therapist because people tell you their whole life story.
I'm telling you.
Say their whole life story. So I often say like I'm somebody who listens to stories and solves mysteries all day.
I don't even tell nobody. I tell people what I do, but boy, I tell you be in that Uber ride. What do you do? I literally took a video of this man telling me, I said, I should never say what I do.
No, it's horrible.
I'm saying, can I be your... No, it's a conflict already. It's a
conflict.
I'm in a Uber car. I'm already so... But it's just interesting how therapists do certain things that is just inappropriate.
And like practicing outside their lane?
Practicing outside their lane.
Okay.
That is another thing. Like, if you do not have the skill set...
Give us an example.
If you don't have the skill set to be a couples marriage family therapist, please don't do couples marriage and family therapy work. Don't say you're a couples marriage and family. I went to school for 5 years. 5 years, okay. I earned these letters. I earned that degree. So I'm not saying you can't, but just make sure you get the proper training. Yeah. You don't have to be in the school for 5 years, but just make sure you get the proper training to actually help the clients. Because I've had clients come to me and say, I want to go to an actual person who studied this because I'm going to too many therapists that say they know how to do it and they don't. Yep. So don't do it just for the check. Yep. Don't do it just to say it sounds cute. Mm-hmm. This is real life stuff that you're dealing with, and you're taking people's lives and you're playing with them with skills that you don't have.
Yeah. And therapists have to understand, like, it's okay if you can't, right? You just mentioned, like, you are a marriage and family therapist, and I've had a lot of clients who want me to provide. I work with all men, obviously. And so I've had the guys that I work with say, hey, can you do couples counseling with myself and my girl? And I'm like, well, ideally I could, but that's not my strength and that's not my lane. I don't do well with more than one person when I'm providing a service. I know that's your strength. You went to school for it. So we always like to refer out. And then whether the therapist wants to admit it or not, there can be a bias, right? If you work with a client and you bring in someone else, I think human nature says you naturally, without even thinking about it, may side with that client when you don't mean to. So recognizing that you are not the appropriate person for that client when it comes to that kind of work.
Yeah, you do need to know if you are, and when your timeline is out. Like sometimes you can work with clients for a long time and you can get very mundane. Like you could be like, okay, that's why you want to keep them because it's easy for you. It's not a task anymore. It's not a challenge, but it's easy. And that's not fair for you. And it's not fair for that client, especially the client, if they're really coming in for some type of therapeutic work. So we definitely need to be mindful as therapists and as clients. And you have a right as a client. If the service is not up to your part, up to what you like, you can say, talk to your therapist. Let them know. Yeah. This is not working for me.
And that's what I'm glad, like, at our practice, we do that. So we'll give the clients one try to kind of switch because we realize not everybody's a good fit to say, hey, you know what? It didn't work out with such and such. Okay, you can transfer one time. Now, if it's more than once, then we got to look at yourself.
We got 2-3 therapists. Come on now. Come on now. We in mental health, so we might need to look at exes too.
Definitely an axis too. Definitely an axis.
And I don't deal with exes too very well.
We can talk about that forever.
I know, but just making sure you have a right to say something's not working. I always encourage that with our clients, and they feel really empowered when I say. They say, "Oh my God, for real?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is a service. You just don't deal with anything. You don't do any type of service. You're paying for whether your insurance, a copay, or if it's fully covered. You're paying at some point in your service. Exactly. So you should get what you need, what you deserve to get. And if it's not working, please." And I always ask like feedback. Is there anything I can do differently? Is there anything the therapist can do differently? And I also ask the clients to have conversation with the therapist first. Yeah. Before ending. Because a lot of times people are really good at ghosting.
They are.
That's what you came in for because you ghosted the boyfriend or boyfriend ghosted you. So
now you ghosting your therapist.
Now we ghosting therapist. We don't ghost. We don't need to stop the ghosting the therapist. Okay. So we need to make sure. I always try to say, hey, why don't you have a conversation with your therapist first if that's something you're into. Yeah. If you can, then maybe you can kind of work through that. And then if it doesn't work, then okay. But at least you gave it a good Girl Scout try.
But I understand from a client's point of view that sometimes it may be hard to talk to the therapist about their treatment, especially if they don't agree with how it's going or are not satisfied, because we often look at the therapist in an authoritative position. Right. So they don't want to disappoint the therapist or feel like, well, I can't say that, but it's like, but you can. And so I think keeping that in mind and understanding, like you said, this is a service that I pay for and I have a certain expectation, but where do we find a common ground?
Yeah, and it's important too. That's why we do quality control. And I know even doing that, clients be so... Y'all got to give y'all clients a hand because they be want to protect you to the end. Sword, shield, and I be like, I ask a question, that hesitation, I'm trained. So I say, come on, Miss Smith. Just go and let me know. I ain't trying to get so-and-so in trouble. Because she nice. She real nice. I said, I ain't asking about nice. I'm asking professionalism. Yes. Is this a problem? Well, I said, listen. It's not to get the person in trouble. Yep. We have to do our due diligence to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do.
And it makes me think about on the flip side, when I'm doing supervision with the therapist and asking them about their treatment with the client, and they say, well, I feel, no. I don't want to know how you feel. This is not about you. What do you see? What have you assessed? What do you recognize? I don't need your feelings in this, because if your feelings are leading you, then you're not helping the client in a certain context. So I like that. Like, yeah, it's the best.
But I didn't want to. After all that, I want to tie it into a nice little bow.
What bow is that?
Okay, so I was talking to you recently about a case where a therapist was dealing with a client, and the client was he expressed that he had an over-sexualized experience with the therapist.
Oh yeah, we've experienced that.
Yeah, we've experienced that. I told you. Working with men. What's your experience with that?
Well, because I work with men, I work with young males, most of my career. And so I've had a few instances where, the client has expressed an attraction. And so one of my clients, he kept making a comment on how pretty he thought I was. And I said, thank you, appreciate that. And so it became too much. I said, hey, listen, if how I look is going to be a distraction, then I can't work with you because I'm here to help you heal. And if I'm impeding your progress, then I can't refer you out. And he totally understood that. And he never mentioned it again. And I think we don't talk about that enough because of the kind of space that we're in with these clients, especially if you are a female working with a male. I mean, and I've heard, unfortunately, horror stories from male therapists, from female clients showing up to their office with nothing but a trench coat on. I've had a therapist share it with me. Yeah. Like, it happens. We don't talk about it because we're human first. And that's where the therapist has to hold themselves accountable, right? And with our most recent therapist, where this happened, I like the way the client handled it.
Yeah, she handled it really, really well. She was able to have a conversation, what the client was able to do was come in. She had an agenda to come and have a conversation, but he beat her to it. Yep. And I thought it was cool for him to say, you know what, I really like working with you, but I have an attraction to you, and I feel like it's impeding my work. Yeah. And so I want to kind of work through that. And so she was like, I said, I appreciate him saying that to you. I appreciate you for the process. Okay, let's look at other ways that we can help this man, because he really wants to work, but he's having a really hard time with this piece. So we came up with some different strategies to help that brother out. But I mean, I had someone come to me.
Oh my God!
Said, you got some big old titties. I'm just, that's what I said. That's what the man. That's what.
How did you handle that? I remember this supervision with you. Okay. What did I say? Were you covered up? Obviously,
you always. And I'm like, yeah, I'm coming straight after Chippendale strip show.
Let me just be clear. It's not that I'm saying because you're dressed a certain way that happened, because people are gonna do what they want. Right. But there is a standard that we have as professionals, especially in this space, that we have set. And so I always want to double check with our therapist: are you dressed appropriately, right? Because you can't do nothing about the way you look, right? But you can do something about the way you dress, right? And so that's important. But that was funny.
I was covered up. Especially working with teenage boys, so I'm like, y'all definitely gotta come. But I can't do nothing. I ain't chopping my stuff off. What am I supposed to do? But I was like, okay, and I had a conversation with him, and I think sometimes clients do that to like deter you from the treatment. Yeah, I was gonna say. So he's a teenager. I was like, you trying to deter me, but you're not finna shake.
I was gonna.
Ain't nothing gonna shake but these things. It doesn't shake it, but shake it, okay?
She on the road today, y'all. She is on the road.
But we had a conversation, like you said. Once we had that conversation, because I think it was just him trying to get away from talking about his trauma. Yeah, of course. And so once we talked about it, and actually, it was never a problem again.
But also understanding that, as taboo as it may sound, it's important to talk about it, because we're also modeling certain skills for our clients, right? Those things make us uncomfortable, obviously. Yeah. It makes the client uncomfortable. So ignoring it doesn't help. So when you bring it to the forefront, it helps the client understand, I'm acknowledging that this is happening and how we're going to address it.
Right. So that's
the big old bitties.
Big old bitties.
As we wrap this up, any tip that you want to give to clients and therapists?
Right. I would just say be assertive as a client. This is a paid service. Yes. So you have a right to voice your opinion, your thoughts, and your feelings, and it's a therapist's responsibility to hold that and understand where you're coming from and try to work through that with you. Making sure, if you can, come with your goals if you know, but even if you don't, maybe your therapist can help you with the information that you share. Like, this sounds like this will be a good goal. That we do not fix you. We help. We don't fix. Because you're not broken. And it is not overnight success.
Yeah, I would say that, at the end of the day, I want clients to understand, and people in general understand, that therapy is a process that rewires your brain to create change, and that simply takes time. Yep. So, all right, y'all. That's it for us. Make sure y'all follow us on all social media, Raw with a Purpose. Follow me at Tytannie Harris on all social media, TMH Behavioral Services.
Follow me, Latasha D29 at IG and all social media platforms. That's a wrap for us today.
We out.
BOT out.